most of the time when a person is trying to just put on airs or keep you at arm's length, um, it's because they've never been given permission to just be themselves. They've never had that, you know, you hear all the time that you don't need external validation, and I believe that most of the time. But when you're in a place where you don't feel good enough, you don't feel like you're enough, it's tough to do that internal validation. That's why they're putting on external airs, is they don't feel like they have permission to be themselves, that they're not good enough, and there's distrust. And so for me, it starts with giving them permission.
Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more month than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident. Good day, and welcome to Give a Heck. On today's show, I welcome Sheral DeVaughn. Sheral is a 3-time top-rated radio morning show host, podcast host, streaming radio co-host, and magazine contributor. She has spoken to global audiences and voiced commercials and marketing pieces nationwide. Sheral is the founder of Speaking with Cher, a communication strategy consultation service connecting your voice and your message to your ideal audience. She is a certified specialist of wine, a bourbon professional, and has completed the MR340, the world's longest non-stop kayak canoe river race. She is a mother of 2 and has married the same man twice. When she isn't creating connections professionally, you can find her racing kayaks and sharing stories over a glass of fine wine or whiskey. Sheral believes it doesn't matter where you come from or your circumstances. If you can create a connection through your voice and words, you can create unlimited success in any situation. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Sheral. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on and share with us some of your life journey.
Thanks so much for having me, Dwight. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. We were blessed, for the people listening or watching, we were blessed this week. We were actually together. We were together since last week at an event in Arizona. And this is the second time I've got to hang out and, have happy times, commiserate, good, bad, and ugly with my friend Sheral. And I'm just blessed that she's agreed to come on and share with the listeners and people watching. Her story is amazing. I look forward to her sharing it. So one of the things because Sheral is a listener of my show, she understands one of the things I focus on is the origin story. For those new to my show, I focus on the origin because in order for somebody to know, like, and trust anybody, you need to be vulnerable. You need to be willing to share the good, bad, and ugly, the trials and tribulations of your life. And not everybody has that in their origin. Right. But unfortunately, or fortunately, in order for me to connect, and I know many people, we need to know something about a person. So how can we know, like, and trust you, Sheral? How could you share your origin story, right? From your earliest recollections to little Sheral to where you are today.
Oh my goodness. Little Sheryl knew at a very early age that she wanted to do radio. I wanted to be Wolfman Jack. That's dating myself a little bit there.
I love that.
But I did. I wanted to be Wolfman Jack or Casey Kasem. And for some of your younger listeners, if you don't know who Casey Kasem was, he was the original host of America's Top 40 for before Ryan Seacrest was even a glimmer in his mom's eye. He also was
Yeah.
he also was the original voice of Shaggy for the Scooby-Doo cartoon series. So for me, growing up in Minnesota, a little bitty town in Minnesota, unfortunately, um, my family didn't see a lot of worth in women. We were there to, have the babies, clean the house, take care of our men, what have you. And we weren't supposed to have a lot of opinions. And you know me well enough to know I'm not exactly a wallflower. And I would get into more than a little bit of trouble. So I spent a lot of time in my room listening to my best friends on an AM radio, and they were the Wolfman and Casey Kasem. So what I didn't realize is that back in the days where I wanted to pursue that radio career, that it was much like my family growing up. Women were supposed to be sidekicks, and they were supposed to be giggle boxes or newsgirls. And I've always been of the opinion that if you've got talent, you've got talent. You don't you don't stifle it. You don't try to shape yourself into something that you're not. And so I fought really hard to be something in that industry and to make a difference for other women. And that's part of where my origin story came. I've always been kind of a little mouthy. I don't fit into a
No,
box.
not you. You're
It's
you're
true.
so timid. You're the meek little mouse. Um, question for you. So you grew up in a small place in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Was, in your teen years, did you sit and, or lay in bed and think to yourself, I can't wait to escape, like to get
Oh
away
my
so that I
gosh,
can
yes.
discover my identity? Like what were your thought processes when you were a teen going into your young years as an adult?
I actually was really motivated to take the steps to make a difference and change. I used to stare out my bedroom window, and it would look for miles straight ahead toward the Minnesota River. And so I could see the tree line, and I could see the river and the hills. And I would always dream of, okay, what's on the other side? Where am I going to explore? And in my teen years, discovered that my ticket out of the situation I was put in, I didn't know if I was leaving Minnesota, and I had no intention of leaving a lot of people behind, but I didn't I didn't want to just be the baby maker, So I took the steps in speech debate, got very good at that. Um, I was involved in music and theater. Theater was my love. That was my great escape, and started to hone my speaking skills and polish all of those different steps in order to get me to the next step. And in my head, that was, I'm going to be the first girl in my family to go to college. And I was, but we couldn't really afford, we couldn't
Mhm.
afford college. So I had to really work on my grades and my skill set in order to be able to get land scholarships and such to go through college. And I did. I was very focused from a very early age because I really believe that the only way to break free and in the process help my mom and my brother was for me to excel and get out of that whole that whole situation so that I could pull them out with me eventually.
So where did your tenacity come from, though? How did you become so tenacious to, work so hard to get your scholarship, to be able to go to college, to set that example? Did you have a mentor in your life that you looked up to, or somebody in your family or external to your family, somebody that you just admired?
Yeah, there were a few different sources for how that came about. The negative one that turned into a positive for me. My dad would not have allowed anything else. I mean, if I came home with an A minus or a B plus, I may as well have, committed murder. It was pure hell if I didn't come home with straight A's. But the tenacity and the drive came from my mom's side of the family. My mom ended up, she would work 3 jobs just to provide all of the things for my brother and I, and to give me the ability to do these extracurriculars. My dad was in a work related accident when I was young, right before my brother was born, and was paralyzed from the waist down. So my mom picked up the slack with everything, but her parents, my grandparents, were my grandfather was in World War II and came back home and worked hard to put food on the table for the family, and was a postmaster in the little bitty town that they lived in Minnesota. My grandmother, my grandma, she was 4 feet 9 inches of pure energy, fury. If you got on her wrong side, you never wanted to piss Grandma off. I'll just put it that way. But she ran everything. She was the most organized and determined woman I had ever seen. She raised all of her brothers and sisters. She was employed and taking care of them by the time she was 15 years old. So I mean, there was no give up where my grand was concerned. And she had made, before she passed, she made the comment that sometimes personalities skip a generation, and that I was my grandmother's child through and through.
Sweet. It's, and sometimes we, as young people, it takes us till we're adults to look back and realize that the comments or suggestions that were similar, or we have personality traits that they admire, but we don't take it that way because we're not mentally mature enough. And I've had, things like that said to me as well that I didn't really appreciate when I was younger, even things about my father, right? That
Mhm.
I picked up on, and now I wear it as a badge of honor, right? And that's
It's
what it
it's
sounds like
yeah,
for
it's
with
funny,
you.
the things that we don't appreciate as a kids as kids. I'm never going to be like that. I'm not going to be like my mom. I'm not going to be like my dad. Even my dad, I look back now on some of his traits, and I see and appreciate some of the things that I did get from him, the love of poetry and science fiction, and some of these weird quirky things. His sense of humor, he loved British humor. I'd sneak out periodically, and he'd let me watch Monty Python with him. And
Oh,
so,
sweet.
heck, my weird love of professional wrestling, that comes from my dad. But I didn't appreciate it until just a few years ago. And I think I finally got closure on all of the hurt and all of the drama that transpired within our family. And I'm starting to see things in a different light, and seeing the pieces that make me who I am. You get little pieces from here and there, and that's not a bad thing. It really isn't. It's what you do with those pieces. You can either focus on them and attribute good or bad to them, or you can just look at them for what they are and see how you incorporate them into your own life and turn that into a positive. That's who you are. You're going to have pieces from people all along the way.
Well,
And
even your
I think it's a good
children,
thing.
yeah, even your children and my children, it is what it is. And who knows when, what age you're going to be at when you have that epiphany, that light bulb moment, and go, I used to be always upset about this or that about my parent or my sibling or maybe an uncle, aunt, or family friend. And then all of a sudden, I've had many of those, especially in my 50s now, where I all of a sudden get that, hey, I kind of appreciate that. Whereas I used to resist it. Like, I'll give you an example. This is going to be sports related. I used to avoid watching sports at all costs. And no disrespect to my father, he's a sports nut. He watches everything. The wrestling, golf, hockey, football, basketball. He pretty much did it all this when he was growing up. And it wasn't until, I don't know, let's say about 15 years ago when I started watching and appreciating hockey. I'd go to it, but it wasn't necessarily I went to please others. Now I go because it's for pleasing me, right? But it's, who knows how there's going to be things that in my 20s that I could probably think back that I appreciated in 30s and 40s and 50s. I imagine in my 60s I'm going to have more epiphany moments, and that's part of the journey. But I like how you said it's how do we interpret it, right? What do we put into those stories or those memories? How do we interpret it? When people look at it negative, some people look at it positive. And it's something that I work on. I'm a working project where I try not to think of things that have happened in my life, even if it's something just recently, in a negative light. I try to pull out the positive. Sometimes it's really hard, right? But other times it's a good thing. So I appreciate you sharing, though. I like the fact that your grandma was a Spitfire.
Oh, you have no idea. No
I love
idea.
that.
She's, like I said, 4'9" of pure, unadulterated force of nature.
My
I miss
grandma
her.
was just my grandma on my dad's side. I miss both my grandmas for different reasons, but my grandma on my mom's side, um, until the day she passed away, she was 4 foot nothing. She probably was let's say 4'9", 4'10". She could take both hands and she could put them both flat on the ground, standing up. And she raised 18 kids, right? She had 18
Yeah,
kids, my grandma. And she was just, yeah, I think Spitfire one, I think of her too, because she was the type of person, she put the men in their place, including my grandpa, God rest both
maybe
their
we're
souls.
related, Dwight. We may have had the same gram. It sounds like it.
Yeah, yeah. So, it's life. Like you can't sit back and those listening and watching, you know, look for the nuggets of wisdom or the good things. Like you said, your dad, you look back at it now and you got your love for wrestling and other things because of him,
Mhm.
of comedy, British comedy. And, I look back and I think of what did I learn even from my grandparents, and they've been gone for a long time. What have I learned from these friends that I had that are no longer my friends, right? Seasons come and go, and so do people in our lives. Are we enjoying the memories we do have of those people, even if they're not in our lives anymore? Or are we just always looking for the negative? Or are we always looking for a reason to be angry and bitter and jaded? Whereas as I mature more, and I know you and I have a lot of similarities,
Mhm.
I have to honestly put in an effort to not think positive now, more about whereas before I had to work it. Now it's harder for me to think negative about it. But again, like Tony would say, I was listening to his podcast this week where he talks about everything is a skill that can be learned. And it's the same thing. You can train your brain, does know the difference between the difference between the truth and a lie. We can train our brains so that you can pivot to the way where I think more positive about events and try to calm people down and say to them, well, that's unfortunate you feel that way. Have you thought about this? Or trying to make them figure that out, right? And I think that's part of the service that you and I are doing, is trying to make people, even with your new podcast coming up, think differently, because they're caught on the hamster wheel of life. Go to work, go home, get paid, and they live in the fantasy world of TV or entertainment or music. Not that in an entertainment basis it's not bad, but when you start living in that life and stand around the water cooler and that's all you talk about, that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
People have stopped learning how to critically think, and they need people. Sorry, people listening or watching, if this offends you, but you need people like Sheral and I or other people that
Or Tony
will teach
Watley,
you how,
for that matter.
yeah,
Yeah.
or to teach people to think differently. Oh yeah, I talk about him on my show all the time, though. He knows that. Um, like his podcast this week, which was amazing. But
Yeah.
those that are new to the show, reach out to me, but check out Tony Watley. He has a
Tony's a great guy.
great podcast called 365 Driven. He's one of Cheryl's and myself's good friends. So, Sheryl, we're going to move on here. Thank you so much. I love the conversation. Still, my favorite part of my podcast is the origin and just finding out and connecting better with my friends. And sometimes people that are on the show are brand new friends, but you and I have been friends prior to this. So
Yeah.
I'm blessed to have you on and hear even, find out even more about you, which is very unique and special. Thank you. So, Sheryl, being a radio personality seems to so many people in this world to be glamorous, right? I know growing up, I'm serious. I used to, as a kid growing up, I used to listen to this radio station, and it was called the Bill and Bill Show because their
Hmm.
both names were Bill. And they had a tour where they went around in a motorhome to all the small communities. And I grew up in a small community of 10,000 people. I'm not in the community I'm now in, over 1 million. And I remember going on my bike and going to meet them. And they were at the local grocery store that was sponsoring, like a grocery store chain, and giving me a little sticker and shaking my hand. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I actually get to meet Bill and Bill. And you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
and I'm not the only person like that, because especially when you grow up in a smaller community, like I was telling you before we started recording, we didn't have cable until I was in, just about a teenager. I listened to the radio all the time. Right. And
Oh
that
yeah.
was, and those people I idolized, not that they weren't human like anybody else, but they had the coolest job, I thought, right? So you and I have had discussions about this, and you brought up some good, bad, and ugly to the surface of, being a radio personality. I would love you to share some of this with the audience, the trials and tribulations of being a radio celebrity.
Well, being a radio celebrity, I've seen, it's a you create a persona, and for me, what I did was I took a facet of my personality and basically went all Spinal Tap. I turned it up to 11 is what I did. And there's other people that I've worked with that just came up with a completely brand new persona. The problem comes when you start drinking your own Kool-Aid and believing your own hype. And I think that's where a lot of people in the industry fail. They forget that they're just like you and I. They're meant to be having a conversation. It's with other people because we don't get the the status for a number one radio show or for syndication. You don't get your face plastered up on a billboard or the side of a bus, or even in my case, I had my face on a park bench just outside of just in Shreveport, Louisiana. And I remember always thinking, I don't want anyone sitting on my face. That's just a weird. That's a weird experience to see somebody plopping
Oh,
down straight on your
yeah,
face, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
but we don't get the success without just you know normal people like you and I. Well, as normal as we are, but
Yeah, true enough.
I think a lot of the people that fail within the industry start to believe their own hype and start to believe, yeah, we celebrity is celebrity is, and I apologize, I don't know why this isn't turning off. Um,
That's fine.
Celebrity is a weird sort of a thing. Basically, celebrity is just you're out in the public. That's really what it is. You don't have any anonymity. I remember I would go out for dinner with my husband Chris and the kids, and people I didn't even know would come up and join us at the table. And you always have to be on. You have to represent the radio station. You don't have a life of your own. You don't get to just be yourself. You always have to be thinking in terms of am I representing the brand? Am I representing somebody else's brand? And sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's not. Um, there's a lot of chemical addiction that goes on within the industry. I watched. I only have one of my former morning show partners that's still alive, and he's in pretty rough shape. Um,
Wow.
it just
Well, it's
there's a lot
glamour.
of hours.
The whole thing is glamored, and
But
I
it's not.
have known a couple local radio celebrities that are now burned out. One of them moved back to
Mhm,
her community in BC, and she literally went through a couple marriages because of it. It was so hard because all of a sudden she's working Saturdays. She
mhm,
got so enthralled in it, burned her out. And I see that with the radio stations that I, listen to,
mhm.
the radio hosts come and go,
Yeah, you literally
especially the morning show people. It's
yeah.
almost like they get eaten up and spit out. And the one of the morning shows I like here, they don't have kids, and they probably never will. They're both in their late 40s, right? They literally talk about their past, going from radio station to radio
Mhm.
station. They met, and they're a couple. They met at a radio station in the Maritimes, and they literally are very honest with how hard it is. And people quit glamorizing it. We have to be, the show starts at 5:30 a.m. We can't
Yeah, I
stay
mean,
out late, and then we
just
have to work on
but
the
you do
weekend.
have to.
Yeah,
That was the craziest part. I mean, let me give you a rundown of what my day looked like, and you'll understand why I
sure.
don't ever want to go back. The last morning show I did, I had an 8-year-old daughter and an 8-month-old daughter. My husband deployed for 4 months over to the Middle East. So
Wow.
here I am with a brand new morning show, a very young daughter, a brand new baby, trying to move into the new house. I would get up at 3 a.m. The nanny would show up at 3:30. I'd go into the radio station. We'd prep for about an hour. We'd go on the air at 5. We'd get off the air at 9. We'd get 45 minutes to de-spin, decompress, grab a little breakfast, come back. Then we'd do our 30 to 60-minute air check session. We'd have several hours of doing commercial production and promos. Then we'd have to head out to 2 or 3 live appearances just on a normal day. Um, Come back for another recording session, do show prep for about 3 hours together. And then sometimes if there was an event or what have you, you'd be out. I mean, if we had a concert in town, I'd literally be out until 11 o'clock midnight and then start the cycle all over again. And it was day in, day out. Saturdays and Sundays, they were always hours of live events. Sundays, show prep once again. So I literally spent more time with my work husband than I did with my actual husband, and my kids were with, nannies. I would say, 8 to 10, sometimes 12 hours a day, sometimes overnight if I had an event, just so I could get a little bit of sleep. And
Wow.
that was day in, day out for years.
But it had an effect though on who you are today. And I don't know if you have regrets with it, but I don't think your personality would be any different if you had done it. But I think the way you look at life has changed, obviously, because of it.
Mhm. Oh, absolutely, it has. I appreciate the time that I have and my family and my friends so much more now because I didn't have it. It was always, tunnel vision with gotta get the ratings. We gotta do this for the radio station. It's work, 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 work. You gotta stay on top. You gotta do it. You're always looking for the next thing to keep you propelled on the top because you live by the book, you die by the book is the saying with radio. And it's always about those ratings. And now it's not about ratings. And I think that's what I learned the last year of doing morning show radio was it was never about the ratings. It was about the connections for me, connecting to that other human being that was kind enough to trust me with their time I mean, the most precious thing we have is time. And, so I would talk to the mom who was sitting by herself in her bathroom every morning putting on her eye makeup and getting ready to face the day before taking the kids to school. I was talking to, um, the businessman who he's getting ready to head out of town on another meeting and he's going to miss his kid's birthday party again. Those are the people you connect to. And the fact that they are giving you a piece of their life and their time, they're sharing their time with you. That made all the difference in the world to me. And that's when it clicked that last year of doing radio. And so now anyone like you taking the time to visit with me here, it, it means so much. You can never give me a more precious gift than your time and that ability to connect.
Awesome. That's a great way to put it. And really, I can confer that, I used to always worry about, especially with this podcast, but I used to worry about, even in my finance industry, well before I got into podcast, I'd be speaking or I'd be in a room doing a workshop, and I wanted everybody to like me. I wanted everybody to listen up. I've got the goose that lays the golden egg, and you need to listen to me. And get into podcasting, you worry about downloads, you worry about where do I rank and stuff. And yes, that's important. But years ago, I realized that all I need to do is touch one person at a time. I used to always think, oh, I can't make a difference, on a large scale. Well, sure you
Yeah.
can. One person at a time, because you change one person's life, it can change their family's life. It can change the people they associate with. We never know how impactful, sometimes we do, I guess, but in most cases, I don't know who I'm impacting with my podcast unless they put a review or they reach out to me. And sometimes people will never, they always hide in the shadows. I have people that listen to my podcast that listened when I used to do my vlog every single day. And I'd run into them and they'd say, oh, this was so good. But they never liked it. They never commented, and they never will. They're just that type of a person. But I'm impacting them. So I had to, the more I hear that, I disconnect from whether or not somebody is coming up and fanning over me face to face at a conference or a workshop, or whether or not it's on my podcast or on a post. I just need to not let the committee of they or the society dictate that a like, a heart, a comment is what life's about. No, it's about having the fact that I know one person's listening. Maybe they're at their end of their string. Maybe they're just ready to collapse. And I have a guest on my podcast, or I do, something that I say in the podcast, or I do the odd solo podcast that just makes a difference. And really, at the end of the day, they're giving me their time, so I better give them the best of my time. So I appreciate your comment. Yes, I'm giving you my time. You're giving me your time. So it's important that people understand that, like you said, time is so precious.
I
And
call
we
it the
just
power
need,
of a 5-minute conversation.
well, it's true.
It's those short, it's those short conversations where
Is it
you're standing.
impactful conversation though?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're standing in line with somebody, and you might think it's a throwaway conversation, a little 5-minute chit chat, but that, like you said, it has the power to change a mood, to change a day, to change a life, heck, to save a life, for that matter.
It
And
does.
I'm living proof of that. Had I not had some of the 5-minute conversations with total strangers I had just a year ago, I don't know that I'd be here talking to you right now.
Well, it doesn't take much. It can just be
Mm.
as simple as being genuine and commenting and complimenting somebody. Oh, that's a nice tie. Oh, that's a nice dress. Oh, I like your necklace. Those are nice earrings. You have an amazing smile. And being genuine about it. And it doesn't matter what hits them after that. That can be the shield they needed for the rest of their day. That can be the joy they needed to not commit suicide. Right?
Yeah,
I've heard that before from
it
people
doesn't
that they've
take
had
much.
somebody. Yeah, it's just being impactful and being kind and realizing that everybody has worth, everybody has value, And, we hear that saying all the time, well, to walk in somebody else's shoes before you judge them. But we hear it, but do we live it? Do we actually think, what's that person going through at home? What's
You
that
have to,
person going through at their job? What's that person, did they lose somebody? It could be 2-3 years ago, and they're still impacted by that loss, and it's affecting it, and their emotional state is going like a roller coaster. And it's so hard. Our society is their empathy for others is just it's so lackluster. It's not there. It's very phony and not genuine. I always tell my kids, even as adults, always be genuine when you talk to people, or avoid it, right? Maybe you
yeah.
can have that 5-minute impactful conversation. That's okay, right?
Hmm.
You don't have to
Absolutely.
be everything to everyone, right? So
No, I mean,
find your tribe.
yeah, the important thing is, like you said, don't be fake. Just be present.
Yeah.
Just be present. Be
Genuine.
yourself
Yeah.
in that moment. Don't be so self-absorbed that you don't take the time to notice somebody, in your peripheral there. Just
Yeah.
just a little bit goes a long way.
100%. So we're going to pivot away and talk about your company. Like, and the reason I want to do this is because I think it's very imperative that people listening or watching to this understand that, so many people, including myself, suffer with the inability to connect our voice and our message and what we're saying to people and find the right target audience, or the right tribe of people that, we can effectively help with our product or service or both. So your company is speaking with Share, and today's world is so needed, right? In my opinion, it is a lacking thing for people to want to help people connect to their
Mhm.
voice, to their message. And I've been working on this a lot myself since the pandemic and even prior to the pandemic. But I understand more now than I ever have that I need to constantly always be working on it and tweaking it so that I can truly serve others. Because when I truly serve others and have the right voice and right message, and can service them, I get what I need. And I'm not talking monetary. I'm talking, I fill up my, my void, my love tank, my emotional tank. And then by doing that, there's always, I'm God fearing. I believe then that we're taken care of, and money will come to us
Mhm.
by doing the right thing. So explain to me why you believe it's important that individuals or companies struggling to connect their voice and message to the right target audience get this laser focused as soon as possible.
It's terribly important for you, not only from a professional perspective and a business. I mean, bottom line, you go into business because you want to make a living. However, it's important that you get your personality to come through. It's important that you can speak the right language to the right person so that you get their needs met. That's why we're in business. It's You're providing a product, a service. Um, you don't feel so alone. For me as a professional, a communication strategist, there are so many people out there with great ideas and great purpose, whether it's um, for profit, not for profit, what have you. But they feel alone. They feel unheard. They they're this close to something amazing, not only for themselves but for someone else, and they struggle. I mean, it's all about, like you said earlier, it's about the people are posing and they're fake, and how many followers, how many likes, and nobody knows how to trust, and we're becoming more and more isolated. And the big thing for me is that connection. For me, it's not even it's not about the business. It's about bringing people together so you don't feel alone anymore, so you don't feel invisible anymore, to have
So
that invisible voice.
how much is vulnerability a part of that then? Because, if we're not worried about the likes and the comments and the remarks, and we need to be able to connect with people, vulnerability, I constantly hear that, you need to learn to be vulnerable, not be that pose or that facade person. So with your message and what you want to help people, are you having to educate them how to take off their mask and be more vulnerable so their message is more predominant?
It is. It is a little bit like that. It's going in. Think of it when you're meeting somebody on a blind date, maybe your first date. You always want to put your best foot forward, but you don't want to stay in that position. It's so shallow. You want something that's deeper, more meaningful, that is more enriching for both yourself and for the other person. And in business, coming up with these communication strategies to connect to your ideal audience, it's kind of that same way. You're building that relationship. You they'll keep coming. You want a marriage at the end of the day. You want a good working relationship so that both people are benefiting out of the deal. But you have to be vulnerable. You can't expect to. Okay, we're gonna do a little role play here, Dwight. So
Sure,
let's say
go
you and
for
you
it.
and I, had first met, and you're kind of interested. Let's say I'm in we're talking. There's the initial interest, but whether or not that relationship takes hold is going to be dependent on whether or not we have enough in common. And if you or I were to turn into later on down the road, we determine the other one is being dishonest or fake, what's going to happen with your relationship?
Down the shitter.
Yeah, you're not going to have one, are you?
Yeah.
It's the same way in business. When you don't let your personality shine through, you either end up with the wrong person and you got a terrible relationship, you got a shit show, or you end up with nobody. You have to build that relationship. And when it's the right one, you'll keep getting the right ones. And pretty soon they tell their friends and you're double dating then. And then, you go and you're on a cruise together with the whole family. It turns into all of that, but it starts with that with that being that one time where you're honest and you're open and you're not putting on any false airs. Think of your business or your podcast or any of it as that first date, and that you're building that relationship to a marriage where you have 18 kids later on, and you're at the family reunion and everything. That's what your audience and your clientele for your business is, if that makes sense to you.
Oh yeah, I get it. With my I know one of the biggest things in my clientele base for the last 20 years in dealing with people is being vulnerable. And I've had the odd person that just says, you know what, we don't want to discuss that. Like, I'd ask them questions about their lives and I guess their origin, right? I've always been fascinated by people's lives and having that connection. And, the end result being a transaction, but the 90% of it being about the relationship. And I had people say to me, well, I just want to press hard 3 copies. I don't want any of this. Just sell, 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 sell. Well, I've had that comment and I've done it and then regretted it always, because there's no connection to them staying loyal to myself or me to them. There's no longevity. There's no,
Mhm.
like, clients of mine that have invited me to their weddings or birthday parties, or come hang out, come to this Halloween party, or come to this New Year's party. That doesn't happen with somebody that's
Yeah,
just transactionally based, and that's not
it's
what
like
I
a one
want.
night stand.
Well, I feel dirt. I was just going to say it makes me feel dirty. I just, like,
Yeah,
I'm just selling you a product. Well, you know that's that's even going up to a drive-through window. It doesn't have to be just a product. You could be
it
friendly,
doesn't.
they can be friendly. But it's sad. How do you get somebody past that transactional mindset where they're always on, they're always presenting something to sell, sell, sell? Like, there's many things that I can think of that might help them, but I'm certainly not an expert. And you've got a company that utilizes teaching people how to get past that. How big of a struggle has that been, though? Like,
It it can be initially. I always find that there's always some resistance in the beginning, but I go from the mindset that most of the time when a person is trying to just put on airs or keep you at arm's length, um, it's because they've never been given permission to just be themselves. They've never had that, you know, you hear all the time that you don't need external validation, and I believe that most of the time. But when you're in a place where you don't feel good enough, you don't feel like you're enough, it's tough to do that internal validation. That's why they're putting on external airs, is they don't feel like they have permission to be themselves, that they're not good enough, and there's distrust. And so for me, it starts with giving them permission to be themselves with me. It's that friendship. You build that relationship and that friendship,
So it
and when
is,
they
it really
it
is that
is.
simple. It is
It
that
is.
simple then. It's complicated, but yet it's simple. I tell people that
Yeah.
all the time in regards to goal setting and financial planning and stuff. It's simple, but yet it's not simple because our 6 inches between our ears gets in the way. Our pattern to learn behaviors from childhood to adulthood causes issues. So if they always seen the fact that their parent was one way and then out in public was another and putting on a facade, they start developing that themselves, would they
They
not?
do. They do.
Yeah. So
They do
you're
because
giving them
they've never
permission.
been.
It
Yeah,
is that simple. I
that's
never thought about that.
it.
It's
It
just,
really
hey,
is that
I
simple.
give
Give
you
them permission.
permission to just share, right? This is a safe space, right? Obviously, you got to give off the right energy and use the right communication skills to make them feel safe because, manipulation of the way we present in a good way is not bad if the end result is to help somebody grow and change and have a stepping stone forward in life and quit being camped. Because I get people that'll say, well, you say that you're a wordsmith. You say certain things to evoke a specific response. I said, absolutely. Well, that's manipulating. Okay, call it what you will. But if that manipulation helps a client get out of debt, goal set for their lives, help them save for retirement, get their kids in extracurricular activities, make them sleep better at night and not in quiet desperation, you call it manipulation. I call it working and molding the clay that was stuck in a specific position because of patterns that they didn't have a choice in growing up. And I'm
Words
giving
are
them choice. I'm giving them permission, like you would say.
words are just words. There's no good nor bad with words. It's how you use them that where you get the connotation, whether it's a good or a bad thing. It's kind of like what we were talking about earlier with the memories, of our families and friendships that may or may not have been, what we consider to be good. The memories and those pieces aren't good or bad on their own. It's what you do with them. It's how you take them and utilize them that makes it either manipulative or helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. It's how it's just like, I guess this is like a segue, but money has no personality, right? We
Mhm.
give it personality. It's no different than the words we utilize or the stories. Are we doing it to positively impact, or are we using it to do the opposite? Like a
Exactly.
narcissist or somebody that gaslights people use it in a total different way, right? So yeah, it's
Mhm.
it's interesting, the human condition, right?
Yeah,
But
it is.
good for you having the tenacity to go through what you've gone through in life to get to a point where you have a company, speaking with Share, to actually impact and make a difference and give that person the permission for once in their lives to let down their guard and not always be on and protecting an image, which isn't truly necessarily them. I bet you there's
Mm-mm.
people out there that have dropped that persona, been more vulnerable and seen their career. Maybe they're not a business owner. Maybe their career gets better. Maybe they are a business owner. Things just elevate and pivot because now they're being genuine and they
Mhm.
attract a better level of clientele. Wouldn't that happen?
It it happened to me. I'm what I'm doing is based on the experience that I've had. I wouldn't be where I am right now had I not dropped the guard and stopped putting on that radio persona or trying to fit into somebody else's mold. My friendships are better. My associates and colleagues and clients are better. My family life is much better. It just everything everything raises to a higher level, a higher vibration, I guess, if you will, when you don't have to spend so much time thinking about, okay, did I say the right thing at the right time to this one? Did I
Yeah,
appear this way over here? And you spend so much time thinking about what you're supposed to be doing that you
it's
never really
tiring.
do anything well.
Yeah,
Exactly. It's
it's
so much
tiring.
easier. Everything gets better
Just
this way.
yeah, it's just easier to be genuine. So the next thing I wanted to get into with our conversation, and because I've experienced this with you hanging out a couple times now,
Uh-oh.
you're a certified specialist of wine, a bourbon professional. I've been in your presence when your knowledge and passion kicks in, which is amazing, to
Thank
help
you.
others enjoy their cocktail experience. What is the story behind this passion for you? How did you get involved in that?
Totally by accident. I I went on a trip to Niagara on the Lake in Ontario for my birthday for the Ice Wine Festival. I thought, okay, yeah, this is kind of cool. I think I'll check this out. I just wanted to go somewhere I'd never been and experience something. You know, January is a cold, awful month. I figure if I'm going to be in the cold and awful, why not go to Canada and drink wine, right? So so I ended up got a driver and I started going to the various wineries and I found myself, imagine this, talking my way into some of the VIP tasting rooms. And I think it was, where was I? I was at Peller Estates and in the VIP tasting room and several hours went by and there was a somm by the name of Jeff that was pouring the wines and asking me various questions and you know, I didn't know anything other than just from my own consumption of it. And finally, he looked at me the one day and said, "So how long have you?" Or the one day, it felt like several days there. Um, he looked at me and said, "So how long have you been in the industry?" And I said, "Oh well, I'm not. I'm not in this." And he said, "Well, why aren't you?" And it's like a light bulb went off in my head, and I went, "That's a really good question. I really enjoy this." So I came back home and looked at my husband and I said, "Chris, I think I'm going to become a certified specialist of wine." And there's this dead silence and if you haven't met my husband yet, but anyone that knows Chris can see him as he just sits there and looks at me like, "Oh, please get me out of this." He says, "Why do you want to do that?" And I said, "I don't know. It just it seems it feels right." And he said, "Well, what are you going to do with it?" I said, "I haven't figured that out yet, but it'll come once I get this designation." And sure enough, I got introduced to a gentleman by the name of Van Potts, who owns Preston Lane and Partners. We clicked, uh, ended up going with he and his team for a 7-day whirlwind tour of wineries, meeting with various um, winemakers and producers in where were we? We were in Spain, in France, a little bit in Germany, and in Switzerland of all places, so that he could show me what happens behind the scenes. He really and truly believed in me that much, then came back, set me up with a distributor based in St. Louis who was looking to open up a market in the Kansas City area where I'm living and said, "This is our girl." And I'm like, I don't even have any experience, but I had enough knowledge thanks to sort of, you know, the whole learning process. I became a certified specialist of wine in 3 months, and I had enough experience with connections with people from radio that it wasn't difficult to open up a whole new territory for me. And that was in the hardest time of the year. They say October, November, December, OND in the wine and spirits industry is you can't get new accounts, you can't establish anything because everybody just wants to buy for the holidays. And it's a whirlwind. Well, that's when I opened up the Kansas City market, and by the time the first of the year came, ended up having to hire two, because it was just me. we hired two other people at that point and then a couple of drivers because it was insanity. Nobody told me I wasn't supposed to be able to do it. So boom. And it just came because of connections.
And
And
your
that's it.
tenacious nature.
Yeah, you just keep showing up. Eventually, it's kind of like with a stray dog. They'll growl and bare their teeth and everything, and but you keep showing up to feed them, and pretty soon they'll come over and they'll
Wagging their
take it out
tail.
of your hand. Yeah, and you make friends. So
Yeah.
it's the same way.
That's awesome. You know, I'm just loving this conversation, getting to know you more. So explain to our listeners and to me, how did your podcast, Cocktails and Conspiracies, come about? And what can one expect to experience when they listen to this podcast?
This podcast is, I'll just say it. It's Tony and Lisa Watley's fault. We I was doing an event for in Houston for Christy Love. She was hosting an event, and I was her MC. And so I flew down to Houston, and on our lunch break, I went with Tony and Lisa for lunch, along with another friend of ours, Anthony Shepard. And we were just, chatting about radio days and everything else. And to put it mildly, I'm a little quirky, just a smidge. So we were discussing my love of the mullet hairstyle. We were discussing professional wrestling and all the crazy stuff. And I don't remember if it was Tony or Lisa asking, I bet you believe in UFOs too. And I'm like, absolutely, I believe in all of the Bigfoot and everything else. And so they're like, so you like booze and Bigfoot? And I'm like, absolutely, I do. Those are two things that I'm very passionate about, and they're fun. And Lisa said, yeah, you should do a podcast or something like that, with your radio experience, booze and Bigfoot. And I'm like, yeah, or maybe cocktails and conspiracies. And then she's like, that's good. She looked up the domain. She said, it's available. Well, it wasn't really available. I had to buy it and got it. Somebody had tried doing, I guess, a true crime podcast with it, and it didn't go very very far. So I bought the domain, and then I'm like, okay, how am I going to do this? And pretty soon, I mean, I've got all of these contacts that I've had a great rapport with over the past decade, 15 years in the wine and spirits industry. So I already had them on board. All of a sudden I started getting introduced to the Bigfoot people, or um, the paranormal investigators, woman who communes with reptilians. And all of these fun, interesting people are in my universe suddenly, or whichever universe they're in. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's fun. And it all came about because of, well, another 5-minute conversation
Yeah.
with the Watleys at lunch in Houston. And just that fast took action. And now we're launching.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like, yeah, I believe in extraterrestrial life. I believe in a lot of things that people in society want to not, they don't want to acknowledge or be aware that there's things outside of ourselves. Like, come on, we can't be on this planet on the conspiracy side of aliens and think that we're the only person in the vast universe, that we're the only planet. Like, give me a break. You can't think that, I don't believe that when we pass that we're just not there anymore. Right. There's different things that I believe in that others don't. So when you told me about the podcast, I was just like, right on, this is cool. And,
Well, it
and
makes yeah, it makes
it's just,
for fun,
yeah,
interesting conversation. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, there's something there for everybody. And
yeah,
it's like Cheers. It's like paranormal Cheers. We're sitting around a table and we're having these conversations, and they are fun. I mean, right now everything is so polarized. Everybody's so angry. You need something that
Everybody's either left or they're right. Nobody's in the middle anymore, or can just, agree to disagree and move on. It just, everything has to be, this is the way it is, matter of fact. And if you believe anything else, get bent. All right. It's
well,
just like,
and in
seriously,
this
people.
and in this atmosphere, it doesn't matter, you can have yours. There is no such thing as Bigfoot, or there definitely is Bigfoot, but it doesn't matter. It's not a hostile situation. It's just a fun place where it's, me, you, and a couple of our other friends, pouring a cocktail or a mocktail, if I'll provide recipes for mocktails if you're not into drinking. But it's a place where we can all come together and just not take ourselves so horribly seriously for too
Serious, yeah.
long. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Well, it's, and even with my own podcast, I don't want people to be so serious. I want them to be
Uh-uh.
serious for specific things when we're communicating, but it should be a seriousness where they're relaxed and the conversation flows. It shouldn't be hard. It shouldn't be difficult. It shouldn't be pitchy, like your, famous pitch slapping,
No pitch
right?
slapping. No
Yeah,
pitch
yeah.
slapping.
But part of the conversation is, let's talk about your business. Let's talk about your podcast, because you're my
Yeah,
friend. I still want to elevate and help promote you to the world, because I know, like, and trust and care about you. So it doesn't make it pitch sloppy. It means
mm-mm.
it's part of the conversation. Hey, what do you like doing with this, Sheral? Hey, Sheral, why did you do this? It just gets people that are listening to know, like, and trust. And I have people say, well, why do you talk to people on your podcast, or why do you ask them about their own, podcast, their book or anything, or their coaching and stuff, when you do a lot of that stuff yourself? Because different strokes for different folks. All
We're not
right.
we're not
We're
competing.
I'm not
We're
competing on a
yeah.
planet of 7 billion people. I think that I'm secure enough in myself that to know that if somebody starts listening to your podcast and likes it better than mine, it was meant to be.
I want people listening to yours, because you do, like the name says, you do give a hack. And I think more people need to. We need to, talk about what you're doing. We need to promote things that are going to elevate each other. There is enough to go around for everyone. There really is. You find the right people, you find the right places, you fit yourself in. It's this glorious little jigsaw puzzle of humanity. There's no reason
Yeah.
why you have to take the piece and run away.
Well, it's just like recently here, because Tony reposted it. And then I went and read up on him. And you listen to somebody like Alex Hermosi. He's just who he is. And one of his posts said, you know what? In the first 4 years of my podcast, I didn't even rank. I didn't
No.
even, I didn't care. I showed up every single day. And that gave me hope, because I've gotten to a point where, my podcast is doing okay. But just like any human being, I want it to do better. I want it to reach more people. And
Sure.
we all have that vanity metric. Let's be real. We may not admit that we do, but we do. And then when I read that post, and then Tony and I talked about it, he said, yeah, he says he says, you look at how long I've done my podcast, just shy of 300 episodes, and how long it took for it to take, traction. Then there's other people I know that they're 20, 30 episodes in, and they've got tens of thousands of downloads.
Hmm.
Some people
Yeah,
it happens. Some
you just
people
don't
it's
know.
right away. Some people you don't know, right? So it's just, yeah, enjoy the journey. That's what I tell people all the time. I just got to keep on reminding myself, are you enjoying the journey? Are you enjoying the fact of the people you're interviewing and having conversations with? Are you learning something from it, right? And
Yeah.
yeah,
Listen,
that's why
we're all on the
I
same
prep
road.
for it. Right?
We're
So
all on the same road. We're just on different mile markers. That's it. But
exactly,
it's the same
exactly.
road. It's the
Yeah,
exact same road.
yeah.
I am not a speed demon. I am not going to hit, mile marker 17 as fast as some people. I may have to kind of slow
But
walk it and get to
your
3.
life
Yeah.
experiences can make it so that you going to hit the mile marker faster than somebody that hasn't, that's just starting on the journey, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like people say, oh, Sheryl, I'll still laugh at people when they say, oh, Sheryl or Dwight or Tony or whoever, they were a success overnight. Yeah, 20-year overnight success or 30-year over. Are you kidding? That's why people listening to this podcast, start over at the beginning if you still don't get it. Cheryl's where she's at in a culmination of life experiences, school of hard knocks, being willing to be tenacious and get through the trials and tribulations. And I'm the same way. We're not overnight successes. Luck doesn't exist. Luck exists when you prepare and go and take action, right? You're willing to skin your knees. You're willing to, have a belief or a faith that you can succeed until it happens, right? And that's the toughest thing, and why people quit on life, right? Even living,
Yeah.
not saying taking their lives. I'm saying they quit on life and get on the hamster wheel and just they've quit giving a heck, right?
Yeah.
They quit realizing that you can smile and have fun with conspiracies and have cocktails and conspiracies, and life's a journey. I don't know if I'm going to be here tomorrow. That's why every moment that we hung out over last week, from Thursday until Monday, I wanted to be present in the
It's a
conversations and listening and
yeah.
realizing, and I'm not trying to be, sad or cynical or negative, but I don't know when I'll see you again face to face. Maybe something happens to you or and then I want to have that memory of Sheryl.
Yeah.
If something happens to Sheryl, I want Sheryl to have that memory of me. And if both of us should something happen to us, other people have good memories when they get to interact and be with us. And it's no different than even if it's virtual like this, being on a podcast, right? This is a
Mhm.
memory encapsulated. This time that we've given one another is out there forever.
It's
And I'm
priceless.
blessed and grateful, right?
It is a priceless experience. Life is a grand adventure. Think of it as, you can either ride the teacups and get dizzy and maybe sick, or
Yeah. Yeah.
ride the big e-ticket rides and have the thrill of your life. Every moment should be that e-ticket ride. It should be Space Mountain,
Yeah.
and just enjoy the ride.
Yeah. And realize that, like it's such a simple saying, but I've been using it for probably 20, 25 years. Life's in session. This isn't a dress rehearsal. You need to
Mm.
appreciate the fact of even having the most, profound moments when I wake up in the morning, and having even this morning, being just grateful, getting back in the plane landing and being grateful that I got
Yeah.
home safe, right? Just stuff. People take so many things for granted, and they forget that the journey is ongoing, and they're so stressed about everything. And really, they forget the journey. And the next thing you know, they're on their deathbed going, geez, I wish I would have enjoyed things more. They're not, even the most wealthiest people I know that have passed away, they're not going, geez, I wish I would have worked more. They're going, I
Mm-mm.
wish I would have had some more memories of or they find out they're terminal and they only got so many months to live. I had that with one of my best friends, and then all the regrets. I don't want that to be that person. And I'm not saying I don't
Yeah.
have some regrets, but I'm healthy right now. So if I have any regrets about my past, change it. Can't change the past, but I can change the person that I am now, and look back at those regrets as learning lessons and stepping stones for me being the higher level person I am today, instead of being that person living in the valley of despair and quiet desperation. That's when all the regrets come out. That's when they cause you to be depressed or have anxiety because you're worried about what's tomorrow going to come. And we can change people. We really can, right? I'm prime example. Like I had somebody, we were talking about it at the event, and they were asking about my life, and it was a person that I gave a book to, and I said, the book is short, impactful, and it's going to let you know that it was designed to let you know that you can give a heck, right? You don't
Mhm.
have to stick in that moments of quiet desperation like I lived in, because I didn't
Yeah.
have the right mentors. I didn't have the right coaches. I didn't have the right associations. You can change, right? Here's how you're going to
Absolutely.
change. This is the first baby step. Here, take this book, right? Read this
That's
book.
exactly it.
Oh, let me pay you for it. No, you just have it, right? It's not, and speaking of that, I want to talk about your book too. So I'll let you add anything else you want to add in regards to, what we were just talking about. And then I want to talk about your book because, I think that's pretty exciting.
I think it's a pretty good segue too. You talked about, with your book making that difference, and that's part of, that's part of what I'm doing with this book. It's part autobiography, it's part motivation, it's part self-help, and it is
Let's tell the listeners. There you go. The
the frog in
frog
your
in,
throat.
yeah, an
Um,
unconventional primer for leaping
Leaping,
life's hurdles.
it's a grown-up unfairy tale, and it goes into deep depths of some of the things that we talked about here today, you and I, with the situation that I grew up in, and with a lot of the work experiences, with some of the struggles that I experienced along the way, and how I got over them, how to leap over life's hurdles. And so it does. It's a story. There is a happy ending that comes from it, but it's an unfairy tale. It's not, oh, and then everything was remarkable. No, no, it's always a work in progress. There's three there's three characters in this book. There's the stork, there's the fish, and there's the frog. We are one of the three, or a combination of the three, in every given moment of our lives. You want to be the frog, folks refusing others' garbage. You don't want to be the fish, folks in search of help externally. And you definitely don't want to be the stork, the situational taker of rational knowledge. And it relates all through my grand almost 54 years of life, and what I've observed in myself and with others, and how to deal with those situations. There's a little piece that I think anyone and everyone can relate to in it, where your voice doesn't have to be invisible. You don't have to give up. You don't have to think there is absolutely no way I can get over this. There is. There's always a solution, and you'll find it within yourself. And that's what this book is all about, is how I found my way back. I mean, who would have thought that, a 15-20 year successful career in radio, where I wouldn't have a voice. And when you and I met, I mean, you remember where I was. I'm not the same person I was a year ago. I didn't have a voice. I had given up on everything. I had given up on having a career. I had given up on my marriage. I had given up, honest to God, I had given up on my life. And you can get over. You can get over those self-imposed hurdles, because a lot of them are we can't change. We sometimes we can't change what happens to us, but you can change how you decide to tackle it, and whether you become a victim or whether you just kick and claw and either go through, over, under, or around that hurdle. I fell over the hurdle, and you just keep crawling forward to get to the finish line of your version of happily ever after. It it's not a lot of fluff. I'm not blowing smoke and sunshine in this book. It's a very realistic way of, through my experiences, of how you can get yourself over the hurdles too.
And yeah, that's awesome. It all goes back to what we've been discussing, You were vulnerable, you shared, and that's exactly why my podcast exists, is because people that give a heck, that have gone through everything that we talked about right from the beginning, from your origin to where you are today, from your radio career to, wine and bourbon expert, to, your podcast, to your book. The theme though is that you you went through trials, but you learned to flip the script. You learned to reframe things and give a heck about your life. And this book itself is going to be a testimony to the fact that you do care, that you want to serve people, and that you are currently serving people. So, you know, I highly suggest people check out the book. I'll make sure that, there's a link to the website in the show notes. But yeah, I thank you for writing the book. I'm looking forward to it. I just got a copy of it. I was blessed for you to give me a copy when we were in Arizona. Haven't really had a chance to read anything since I got back. Been playing catch up, but I look forward to reading it because I guarantee that it's along the same lines of what my book is. This is where I started. Like you said, you shared a lot of vulnerable things about your life up to where you are today, right? The
Yeah.
tenacious, vibrant, exciting, go get them, get out of my way. Sheral, right? I'm not
Well,
gonna I'm not gonna step
yeah,
on you unless you are out to stop me, right? If you're there to
absolutely.
support me, I'm gonna support you, and we're gonna hold hands and skip through the rest of life, creating memories and moments and changing one person's life at a time.
You inspire me every single day, my friend, and you don't even realize it, how much you inspire me and probably so many others that you don't even know to live a life on purpose with purpose, as you always say. Live a life on purpose and truly live it. And you inspire that. And that is such a gift. I can't begin to thank you enough for everything that you do.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you for your kind words. And that's why we get along. We inspire one another, right?
Although people
So,
don't know that we get along all the time.
oh, yeah. Yeah, for those of you that are listening that have been blessed to be around Charlotte and I, some
We
people
actually do
think that
like
we
each
hate.
other.
Some people think we don't like one another, but we do. We love one another. It's gone past just friendship. We actually care and love one another, and um, yeah, because I was excited to see you again. I can't wait to see you again at wherever we end up. Our lives cross, intersect in the paths and journeys of life. But yeah, so I appreciate that. So the last question I have for you, which a lot of people, enjoy, and hopefully you do too, is if you had to give our listeners one last closing message, Sheral, what would you tell them in regards to giving a heck and never giving up?
I would tell them to, well, take your phone, first of all, write this, put it down, turn it off. Look somebody, anybody, doesn't matter whether you know them or whether you don't, look them in the eye and find just one little thing out about them. Just actually, when you take 30 seconds out of your day to make somebody feel like you actually find them important and that you care, not only are you giving them a gift, but man, they're going to give it back to you. Connect, connect, put the phone down and connect in person. Look someone in the eye and feel what that feels like.
Yeah, so many people. That's great, great closing message because so many people hide behind their screens, right? I know people that
Mm.
even wear headphones or put in earbuds and they're not even listening to anything.
No,
They use it as
no.
a shield to hide from the population, right?
You don't need to
And
hide. You're actually important enough and you're interesting enough. Somebody's going to love you.
just got to open your mouth and communicate, right?
Mhm. That's
You're not
exactly
going to
it.
please you're not going to please everybody, but that's okay. You don't need to please everybody.
No.
So our time is almost up and I want to respect our listeners and your time. However, before we end, can you please share with the listeners what is the best way to reach you?
Go ahead and give me a shout at my email. It's share, because all of my friends call me share, SHER, at speakingwithshare.com. Or heck, shoot me a text. I'll even give that to you. 816-585-3800. I'm interested in hearing your story.
That's fantastic. I'll make sure that goes into the show notes. For the new listeners, you can find the show notes at giveaheck.com. Hit the podcast portal button. You'll see Sheryl's smiling face, and below that, you'll find some abbreviated stuff in regards to the show, as well as the links to be able to find her book and be able to connect with her. So thanks again, my friend, for being on. It's been an amazing conversation. It's even better than I hoped for, and I hope for a lot when it comes to our connection, right? So I appreciate you. So thanks so much for being on Give a Heck, Sheryl. I appreciate your time and sharing some of your experiences so that others too can learn it is never too late to give a heck. Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.